Okay, so today we're going to talk about our first introduction to trigonometry. And what is trigonometry? Trigonometry is just the study of triangle measurements. Okay? And there are three types of trig functions that we're going to talk about: sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, sine, cosine, and tangent. All right, so my ratio, all three are ratios. Ratios means that there are fractions. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now, if you need to write all that down, please hit pause to write it down because I'm going to keep moving on. Okay, so the first thing we need to identify is where is my hypotenuse. So my hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. So here is my hypotenuse. Okay, and that hypotenuse is for four different trig functions. Okay, or two. It is for the sines and the cosines. So all of those are trig functions. Okay. Now, depending on which angle you choose depends on what's opposite and what's adjacent. So let's take a look at angle A. And the side that is opposite angle A would be lowercase a over here, opposite. Okay. The adjacent side must always touch the angle. So you notice how B touches that angle. So according to my rule, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which means that this would be lowercase a. That's opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, adjacent on my angle A would be B. So it would be B over C. The tangent is opposite over adjacent. So if I look, my opposite is A, my adjacent is B. Okay. Things slightly change if I used angle B, because if I use angle B, that means that now the little b over here is now my opposite, and this A becomes my adjacent. Okay, so again, sine of B is opposite, so opposite would be lowercase b over c. Cosine would be adjacent, well, the adjacent is little a over c. And then my tangent would be opposite over adjacent, which would be b over a. So it kind of just reverses everything. And the easiest way to remember this is by using the phrase so, ka, toa. So is opposite over hypotenuse. Ka is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some examples. So again, the first thing we need to identify, where is my hypotenuse? My hypotenuse is going to be here. There's my hypotenuse. Okay, and we're going to start with angle A first. If we look at angle A, the 5 is currently the one that is opposite that angle, which means that 12, which is touching it, is my adjacent to that angle. So if we look at this, when it says the sine of A, that says opposite, which is 5, over the hypotenuse, which is 13. And again, if these reduce, you need to reduce them. This one doesn't. Okay. The cosine, according to my rule, ka, is adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, the adjacent side we just discovered is 12. The hypotenuse is 13. Toa, or tangent, has O and A in it. Well, that's opposite, which is 5, over adjacent, which is 12. If you choose angle C, it kind of changes things because now 12 is the one that's opposite it, and 5 is the one that's adjacent to it. Well, again, same thing. If I do opposite over hypotenuse for sine, that would be 12 over 13. If I do adjacent over hypotenuse for cosine, it would be 5 over 13. And if I do opposite over adjacent, it would be 12 over 5. And notice that things kind of just switched around. That should happen. Okay, but how is this useful? Well, we're going to use this to find side lengths of our triangles. Okay, so first thing, most of this is in calculator work, so I need to pull up my calculator. When you pull up your calculator, there's a couple important things. First, make sure you're in scientific. Secondly, make sure it says DEG there. Okay. Okay. So first thing we need to discover is what are our side lengths. Well, if I look at number 4, that gives me 19 as my hypotenuse. Then you look at your angle. Well, my angle there is 28. And what else they give me is this piece over here. Well, if you look at that, x is opposite of 28. So I have O and I have H, which means my trig function that I'm dealing with is sine. So it's going to be sine of the angle, which is 28, equals the opposite, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 19. Now, when I do this, to get rid of the 19, you got to multiply it on both sides. And you get 19 times the sine of 28 equals x. Now at this point, that's when you're going to need your calculator. So in your calculator, here's how you type it up. You do 19 times. You click open parenthesis. You hit the angle, which is 28, and then you hit the trig function, which in this case is sine, and then hit equals. And you get that x is approximately 8.9. And you're done. Okay. Let's go ahead and do another one. So same thing, identify, do I have a hypotenuse? In this case I do, my hypotenuse is 26. Then identify where your angle is, and identify the other side that's given to you, and what is it in comparison to that angle? Well, that's touching 21, which means that it is adjacent. Adjacent to hypotenuse, that is cosine, so it's going to be the cosine of the angle they give you, which is 21, equals adjacent, which is x, over hypotenuse, which is 26. And just like the last one, to get rid of that denominator, we have to multiply by 26 on both sides. So I get 26 times the cosine of 21 equals x. Okay, so just like before, in your calculator, you're going to hit 26 times, open parenthesis, the angle, which is 21, and then your trig function, which is cosine, it equals, and you get 24.3. Okay. Take a look at the last one. Again, do I have a hypotenuse? In this case, I do. Sometimes you won't, and if you don't, that just means you're doing tangent. So there's my hypotenuse. My hypotenuse is x. Then identify your angle. And the 15 is opposite to that angle, so it's opposite hypotenuse, so that's sine, so it's the sine of 33, equals the opposite, which is 15, over the hypotenuse, which is x. So this time the x is in the denominator. When that happens, you're going to have to multiply by x on both sides, just like we did before. So I get x times the sine of 33 equals 15. Well, the sine of 33 is just a number. To get rid of a number when it's being multiplied to another one, you're going to have to divide. So what you get is you get x equals 15 over the sine of 33. So just like before, you were going to get your calculator at this point. So you're going to type in 15. You're going to hit divided by, because now you're dividing, open parenthesis, the angle, and then the trig function that you're dealing with. It equals, and you get your answer to be 27.5. Okay. Last one. So this one, when you're dealing with word problems, draw yourself a picture. So it says Jake leaned a 12-foot ladder. So we know the ladder is leaning against a house. It's 12 feet. It says the angle at which the ladder is formed by the ladder and the ground is 68 degrees. So 68 is the ladder and the ground. How far from the base? Now here's the base of my triangle. Did he place the ladder? So that's what you're trying to find. So that means that 12 is my hypotenuse. Here's my angle. That angle is adjacent to that. So adjacent hypotenuse means we're dealing with cosine. So it's going to be the cosine of 68 equals x over the hypotenuse, which is 12. So to get rid of the 12, we have to multiply on both sides. So you get 12 times the cosine of x, or cosine of 68 equals x. So then again, once you get to that point, it's your calculator. So 12 times 6, open parenthesis, 68, your Trig function cosine, it equals, and you get 4.5.